For years, Democrats have been pushing environmental and green policies on us, and people have been screaming from the rooftops of how much this is going to hurt Californians by raising the cost of living, including the price of gas. Gas continues to go up. It continues to be the most expensive in the entire country. Gavin Newsom blames it on corporate greed. Now we've gotten news that Valero, which provides 20% of our refining capacity here in California, has announced that they are going to be closing their refinery in April of 2026 because it is just too hard to do business here in California. And now, with the prospect of $8 gas not too far off in the near future, California Democrats are scrambling because they know this is going to be really, really bad politically if Californians have to pay $8 a gallon for gas, and they are going to be the ones responsible. So they are trying to backtrack and hold people accountable, but it might already be too late. So they had hearings in Sacramento this past week to discuss with the California Air Resources Board, CARB for short, and they brought in the CEO, Lanne Randolph, who is the CEO and head of CARB, to question her about what's going on here and why are refineries leaving California at a rapid rate, and how do you think this is going to affect gas prices? So let's take a look at that.
Gavin Newsom's administration in the hot seat at the state capitol today as California is set to lose not one, but two oil refiners within the next year. And those closures will come after the governor and his administration pushed and successfully passed new regulations on the oil industry within the past few years.
Lawmakers are now worried how this is impacting California drivers and the cost of living. KCRA 3 Capitol correspondent Ashley Zavala joins us with what could be next. Ashley?
Well, Lisa, three of Governor Newsom's top officials who regulate the oil and gas industry faced a barrage of questions and criticism from lawmakers today. Some Democrats signaling they have lost trust in state regulators. Those regulators have been claiming these oil companies are making so much money off of California, suggesting they've been ripping off customers. But now two companies are preparing to shut down their operations in the state. So those three officials, Lanne Randolph, the leader of the California Air Resources Board, Siva Gunda, the vice chairman of the California Energy Commission, and Ty Milder, the leader of the state's new division of petroleum market oversight. Gunda confirmed with the two refinery closures, California will need to import more oil from other parts of the world. And that oil would arrive by ships. Those two closures account for about 20% of the state's refining capacity. But things got testy before lawmakers could even start asking questions. The three went through a more than hour-long slideshow at one point claiming oil companies are making more money in California than they are in the rest of the country. That's when Democratic Assemblymember Cotty Petrie-Norris cut off Ty Milder.
Sorry to interrupt you, Director. I guess I'm a little confused. So if California companies were raking it in, why did we just have two refineries announce their intent to close? I think we got to focus the conversation around that. And I guess we also have to focus the fact that, Vice Chair Gunda, you began the hearing by saying that we've seen a decrease in demand. If you go back to your chart, the reality is that we've seen a much more precipitous decrease in supply than we have seen in demand. Pricing is fundamentally about supply and demand. So what we need to do, and what we as legislators need your help to do, is help ensure that as much as possible, we are tracking the decline in supply to the decline in demand. If we've got policies that are driving supply like this, but demand like this, we are going to see huge price spikes and a huge gap in prices between what Californians are paying at the pump and around the country. So I'm not exactly clear how it's possible that you're asserting that they're making more money here than they are around the country. If that was true, then we wouldn't have had two refineries announce that they're closing.
So that Phillips 66 refinery closure is slated to happen by October of this year, so about 5 months from now. Then Valero in April of next year. Newsom's administration did not provide a plan on how exactly they plan to address that loss in refining capacity. It's something they told lawmakers they're working on, but still a lot of questions tonight about how they're going to move forward.
So now you have Democrats in Sacramento who are freaking out because they know that gas is going to start spiking in the fall. And that's why this number of $8 a gallon is coming up, is because one refinery is going offline in October of this year, with Valero providing 20% of our refining capacity in April of 2026, which means that 2026 could be even worse, seeing probably prices northwards of $10 a gallon, which, if there is one thing that will constantly piss off voters, it's the price of gas at the pump. So now we have California Democrats who see this catastrophe and acting like, whoa, wait a second, where did all this come from? We're in trouble. What are you guys doing over there? And in reality, most people have been screaming from the rooftops that all of your policies have been pushing these refineries out, have been punishing them. And instead, people like Gavin Newsom have held not one, but two legislative sessions to look at corporate greed, saying that these oil refineries, they're gouging Californians. That's why the prices are so high. Not in any other state out there in the entire United States is getting gouged, but just California, we're being punished, which makes no sense, because why would they pick California out of all of them? Also, to Patrice Norris's kind of point there, the chair of that assembly committee, her point is, if they're making so much money and if they're gouging Californians so much, why are they leaving? Why are they leaving if there's so much money to be had here and they're gouging everybody and they're getting away with it? So Lanne Randolph, who was the CEO, she was appointed back in 2020 by Gavin Newsom. I want to read just a quote about what Gavin Newsom said about her. He said, quote, "Cleaner air is essential for California families. Lanne Randolph is the kind of bold, innovative leader that will lead in our fight against climate change with equity and all California communities at heart by committing to achieving carbon neutrality and a clean economy. My administration is fighting for a healthier and more vibrant future for our families and for our economy." Now, keep that word in mind, carbon neutrality, right? That's what they're all obsessed with. That's what California Democrats have been obsessed with for decades now. It's this idea of carbon neutrality. We have to make it so that California is carbon neutral. And I guess they think they can fool voters with this sleight of hand, where if we're not producing any carbon, it doesn't matter if we're getting our oil from countries thousands of miles away. Like that video said, and we've discussed this before on the show, most of our oil has to be imported from countries in the Middle East, from Guatemala, from Ecuador, from parts of Africa. It has to be imported thousands of miles away on these big ships that, guess what, use fossil fuel to get here. So I guess as long as carbon emissions happen outside of the state, they don't matter. Now, what's probably the scariest of all of this, right, is Lanne Randolph, who is the CEO of CARB, has admitted in this committee hearing, it was not part of the video, but she admitted to one of the assembly members on that committee, quote, "Correct, we don't analyze a retail cost," she told Assemblyman David Alvarez from San Diego. Quote, "What we don't do is take the next step to extrapolate how that cost would flow through to the consumer, because in many instances, that would be speculative." So all of these regulations like cap and trade, low carbon fuel standard, and process safety are all these big things, these regulations that they put on all of these refineries that make it costly and really burdensome to work here in California. They don't even think about it. They don't think about the cost of gas at the end of the day. They just don't care. Imagine that. These unelected officials, Lanne Randolph is appointed by the governor. She was appointed by Gavin Newsom back in 2020. She was confirmed by the state Senate. They don't care and don't look into what their policies will do because it's, quote, speculative. Imagine that. They put all this stuff in place because in their mind, this is the carbon neutrality that they're all working for, but they don't stop and think, wait a second, are we going a little too far? Because this might cost Californians $10 a gallon at the pump. That is the sort of people who are running things up in Sacramento. They don't care. They don't think about this. A little backstory that I found interesting about Lanne Randolph is she was an attorney previously at the firm Olson Remcho, and first thing you see on the page, and if this kind of raises your antenna, quote, "One of the first things I did when I became speaker was to make Joe Remcho my attorney." You know who said that? Willie Brown. If you know who Willie Brown is, he is one of the biggest political kingmakers here in Sacramento. And I'm not going to say all this is connected. But let's just say when you're friends with friends and you have friends in high places, you get these positions at CARB and you get to be the CEO and run and make all these regulations. Now, I want to talk about real quick how many refineries there actually are in California and how many we could have and how much oil we could actually be producing. Right now, there are only 14. Mind you, at this moment, there are 14 operational and online refineries that produce the gasoline that we put into our cars. This is 14 after they have closed numerous refineries. There's capacity up to probably about 38 is what I found. So that's 30, or that's more than double the amount of refineries, which is what we really need to create the gasoline and create the supply that we need to meet the demand here in California. And again, I want to return to this point that the Democrats have somehow got this in their mind, that it's much better to just get oil from these other countries where we have no idea of their environmental impact. We have no idea about the carbon emissions. We're shipping it all the way from thousands of miles away here to California, when instead there is so much oil and refinery capacity here in California. We could be doing it here. We could be creating middle-class jobs and working blue-collar jobs that are great for Californians here. We could be making sure that there is a good environmental impact. We could also be making sure that carbon emissions are lower here and safer. It could be better here, done here for California, produce a thriving industry here in California, yet they have pushed this away decade after decade. And now the chickens have finally come home to roost, because now they're starting to see what happens when you implement all of these policies is that sooner or later you're gonna get $10 a gallon gasoline. And people have been screaming this for years now, but now California Democrats, who see this as a real potential threat, are now all of a sudden changing their tune about what CARB is doing and how they have gone almost completely unfettered and unchecked for all of these years and causing it. Now that their butts are in the hot seat politically, now they all of a sudden want to change their tune. And what does this mean? I think if it does reach $8 or $10 a gallon of gas, you might see a political reckoning here in California, an enormous shift. This might be the final straw, because there is nothing that motivates voters more than anything that hits their pocketbooks. And when people have to struggle with $8 to $10 gallon of gas, that means less food on their tables. That means less discretionary income. That means less things they can afford. That means maybe not being able to put a roof over their head. It means a number of things that could mean a political reckoning for California Democrats. And whether it is too late for California Democrats to now all of a sudden pretend like they care about the price of gas, we are yet to see. CARB and Liane Randolph, they're out of control, and now they're finally being brought and asked the hard questions of what are you doing and costing Californians. But for California Democrats, it may be too little too late politically.